I think it's good to readdress Sokomon. So like I think the stuff I was saying before I realized we were being recorded, let's like scratch that. But I want to tie what's going on with Sokomon Iron Core in, which is not an iron play, it's a gold play in Noon, Finland. And this is definitely the talk of CEO.ca. It's very was interesting because it's still moving up. Actually, I think it 38.5 cents was at least the intraday peak so far today, like up 22%. So it's as quick background, huge shout out to Stateside at CEO.ca, who was absolutely the first person, like influential person who was on this years ago. I'd have to give a shout out to Bull Market Run as a newsletter because I know they were on this right before this big move, and it's eerily similar to what happened with Garibaldi last year, which Bull Market Run was also on, and the fact that Eric Sprott's involved with this supposed placement, 15 cents a full warrant. So it's trading way, way above that, and Palisade Research is involved with that too. I want to tie this into some of the stuff we were just talking about. This has nothing to do with macro. It has to do with the hottest play by far on the TSXV over the last 2 weeks. This has been a 7 or 8 bagger at this point, just in 2 weeks. Kind of incredible. Over 100 people are in the CEO.ca SIC or sick room every day, and right now I'm just seeing dozens of comments every 5 minutes coming out. It's just pandemonium, and you have as many people saying, "I just sold half my shares and I'm free riding 100,000 shares," versus, "Oh, unlike what I usually do, I'm averaging up, and like my I just bought at 38 cents." So you have all this stuff going on, and unlike what Jay was just talking about with lithium, this is the buying at a peak or buying the hype. And I'm just curious from Jay's perspective and Fabi's perspective as well, but with Jay having made some money with Garibaldi and the parallels here. I know you haven't been following this closely, but is this the type of play you would have bought if you knew about it like a week or two ago? Is it something you would still consider buying into, depending on certain factors? Or are you kind of more leaning away from this and more towards what you just described with lithium, where you clearly see an opportunity and are able to express it well? This is such a type of opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because the thought process can actually change quite a bit. I mean, where I am now versus last year. As we talked about last year, Garibaldi was one that I got into. AVZ Minerals was another kind of more early stage. That was more of a brownfield project, but it was still early enough where it was significantly high risk and uncertainty and all that stuff. And I kind of piled in big on that one. Even more so than Garibaldi. I have made money with early stage stuff, just riding that wave up of, hype and momentum and FOMO, all that stuff. I think a lot of it is perspective on what your goals are, and that's really important to not lose sight of, because I talk to a lot of people regularly, and, one guy's telling me, for example, this is kind of, it's a little segue, but it's still related. He was basically telling me, like, I really hate my job. I can't wait to quit. Like, I can't stand this shit anymore. I need a lottery ticket, right? Like, I need a gateway to get there as quickly as possible, right? I'm not advocating for any of this, by the way, but it's just, that's that person's mindset. So they would really gravitate more towards a story like, like the one that's currently going on right now, where you're getting, like you said, 7 bagger, in a few weeks or something, because that's kind of where his focus is, where he wants to get on the next fast moving train and all that stuff. Just speaking for myself, and this only applies for my own situation personally, is, I had that experience last year. I made my gains, and I've actually altered my approach significantly in mining stocks, just overall, because the sector is just kind of too volatile. And for me, this year was more of a shift to wealth preservation and capital preservation, and taking less of these more speculative bets. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just my approach is more, again, trying to find the stuff more like the Nemaska Lithiums and the Lithium Americas, where you have really drilled out, proven projects. They've got definitive feasibility studies. It's on the path to production. I mean, they even, for the most part, have major partners, offtakes, like you name it. Like, it's pretty much every box has been checked. It's like just kind of building the mine now. But just trying to find that opportunity where you can get into these late stage stories, but the market sentiment is so bad where the price is down 70% or whatever. It's just like to take that approach. I mean, it comes with the territory though. Like with that mindset, I'm not expecting to make 7x on Namaska. Like I would be happy if I could make 2x in the next year or 2 years, right? I mean, you have to balance your expectations. They have to be aligned with reality, and just it's like if you're taking a large cap bloated company, that's like fully financed, all that stuff. It's already close to like $1 billion enterprise value. It's not going to move that rapidly versus like an early stage explorer, let's say, that started out like a 5 million market cap or what have you. I mean, that just has that much potential to accelerate just really rapidly. I mean, we all saw it last year. I think at the peak, Garibaldi was, what did it start out at? I don't even remember. It was like 10 cents or something, 20 cents. And then it hit like $6, close to $5, $6.
Probably about $5, but yeah, we could say it was approaching a 50 bagger. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if that's kind of more up your alley, if, that whole, like, I'm looking for that big lottery ticket win, then you kind of need to kind of find stories like this and ideally hop on like before the hype train really starts to pick up steam, because that's when the risks are magnified, because all it takes is like one bad assay and the story could be kind of wrecked. I mean, that's just kind of the reality of this. Not trying to be a buzzkill, but it's happened plenty times before. Just off the top of my head, I mean, I don't follow this. Nick, you probably know better than I do. Like Orion Resources, I think it hit like $3 or something last year. And I haven't really been following the stock, but I just, kind of glanced at it and I saw the share prices come, crashing back down to reality. I don't know if it's because of assays or, drill results or anything like that.
It was absolutely from drill results.
Okay.
But to their credit, they did.
Yeah.
I don't own shares, but they raised a lot of money at those higher levels, and like 20 million cash in the bank. The worst situation is when you go up and you come right back down and you didn't make any of it. But Garibaldi, I don't want to get into the details, but I feel like the way they managed, whether it's right or wrong, they had holes that missed, but they kind of held all that stuff back until they finally had a hole that was high enough grade and like released it all together. They did things that were able to keep it up, and so that, I think that was very hard to tell that was going to hold up the way it did. But anyway, the Sokomon side, it's interesting comparing to like the whole private placement thing, because this is the type of play I'm not involved and I don't plan to, but you could argue, this is the quickest way to make a lot of money if you're able to ride the momentum even more than understanding what's going on with the company, because I think that's what a lot of people are doing. And I guess just, Fabi, I'm just curious, like, is this something that you maybe would have gotten involved with, or you still would, or are you out of, like, not really in this mentality because you're much more in the private placements and even in other sectors besides gold?
So because I've been participating in these private placements so much, I'm pretty much tapped out just for, like extra cash to invest. I don't really sit on cash ever, especially right now with what's happening with uranium, and I'm trying to participate in as many placements as possible for uranium. So that is kind of helping me to stay away. What I find that I will try to implement from now onward, especially after like losing money on Garibaldi, which I'm an expert at, when I do try to, go for something that's more momentum oriented, is that I might have to limit the amount of money that I put into any of those plays, and I need to look more closely at why the price has gone up so much, if that's because of pictures of core, or if it's because of actual assays, if those assays look legitimate, or how much smearing is there in the results, and not just who's behind that play, because the names attached to any sort of hot play will not really hold the price if the market cap is already at a ridiculous price, which was the case when I bought a little bit of Garibaldi. So when I bought, it was already at like multiple 100 million. I don't even remember how much it was, but it was high. And so I lost money on that. But looking at, SIC, Sokoman, like their market cap is probably only 20 million right now. And it's based, if I'm not mistaken, on assays. So that to me looks a lot better, but still, because it is not, I don't think I'm early enough in this play to go with confidence. I have to limit myself to say, yeah, okay, I'm only gonna risk a couple $1,000 into this, and that's it. And it doesn't matter what happens. I'm just gonna feed that little FOMO monster that I think we all have from time to time, and just be content with the fact that I am participating in that in a very small way instead of trying to just follow it so closely and try to put more money into it. I am not good at averaging up. I'll average down, but averaging up is just not something I do because I just keep thinking this is more expensive, this is more expensive, this is more expensive, and I start to second guess the investment even if the story is good. And so I think if I do buy into it, it's not something that I'm just dying to do. I'm not going to put a lot of money into it, but if I do buy this stock, then it's going to be, very minimum amounts based on what they have and a small-ish market cap. We've seen worse. We've seen we've seen higher market caps for a lot less results.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've got one quick follow-up kind of based on what we've been describing, which I find very interesting. I strongly believe that this surge would not be happening with the combination of Eric Sprott's name and involvement and likely that he's buying lots of shares on the market. I really think that's happening. And I think that same thing happened in Novo and Garibaldi. It's still undervalued how much influence that combination of what Eric Sprott's involvement is. So I wanted to also add, because I feel that both of you guys are a little more in my camp, even though we have very different interests in specific sectors, we tend to look more at the projects. I mean, obviously management's important, but we're interested in the projects and the actual commodity. My take is that there are people out there who will literally do whatever Eric Sprott's involved with at this stage. So I'm just curious about, not so much about judging Eric Sprott, but just on the names. Like, do you feel like the industry focuses maybe a bit too much on just having one or two big-time names involved? Is that sometimes a really important consideration for either of you guys to get into something? And maybe if Fabi can elaborate a little more on uranium, because I know that's your focus and you haven't talked too much about it yet, just kind of the main things that determine your uranium speculations.
Sure. So about the names behind general companies of any type, especially in the resource market, I very much take the way of thinking of, I don't know enough about any company to actually say this is a super investment, this is not a great investment, or this is better than that. I think you need to know a lot about geology, and not just geology, but different, types of geology, structural geology. There's also just mine building and engineering and all of that. So you need a lot of skills in order to know if, something is amazing or crap. I mean, take Pretium. Amazing grades, but now they're having huge problems with the engineering, sort of mining the stuff out of the ground and dilution and whatever else. And so I know that I don't know enough, and so because of that, I look at the names behind each play in order to say, okay, how much money is this person putting into this? Obviously, their due diligence is better than mine, so I'm going to lean on that knowledge to help me make a decision. I worry, though, about momentum plays that have big names attached to them, especially because it seems like Eric Sprott is always the big name attached to all of these hot plays. And I think that Sprott is just smart in the sense that he understands that at this stage, especially for a very boring market, which is what we're going through right now, his name becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in almost any smallish junior. So if there is a catalyst, if people are starting to talk about it, you have almost, like the perfect storm of certain ingredients. You have, some results that are great. You have people talking about it. And then you have a big name coming on and obviously getting excellent terms for financing. I mean, who wouldn't, do a financing like that? The guy's already well into the money and has warrants for a lifetime. So when he actually lends his name to any company and they already have all the other ingredients, it's almost a guarantee that that stock is going to go up. The question is by how much and when is it going to die out? How long is it going to take for them to drill and get a duster or for something wrong to happen in the company? And, I would think that Eric knows that and that he chooses those companies specifically. And let's be honest, $3 million, even if it's just Eric Sprott's own cash, is like $50 to us. And so I don't know. It's not that I step away when I see those things, but then I ask myself, okay, how high can this thing really go? What does the market cap look like? And I don't really make any long-term plans to stay in a company when things are that hot. So that's my take on it.
I guess with Sprott and that name, it also made me think about the Pilbara place from last year. We had, what was it, Kairos Minerals and De Grey, I think was the other one that he got into.
Those are few.
Yeah, so those stocks kind of went up, the whole Pilbara region just kind of lit up, during that whole period, especially, after the Novo Nuggets and then, Sprott coming in, and he was trying to, I guess, selectively choose which ones he thought were the best junior plays. He's kind of buying up the whole region. So I kind of have experience with that because I did chase Kairos Minerals. I chased that for a little bit, but I actually sold out prematurely because I was already up. It was like really crazy. I forgot. I was like within like 2 weeks, you're up like 40% or something.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Maybe more than that. My memory's not so good. But it was, that was actually the reason why I sold, was it just looked like it got overhyped. For what it was at the time. It was a hefty market cap, all that stuff, and I really didn't know enough about that whole Pilbara play, like just whether it had validity or it's just going up because of Sprott's name, or were those nuggets that they found like actually that material towards proving this thesis and all that stuff. So I kind of just scared myself out because I was thinking this is running more on hype than anything else. And it's with the benefit of hindsight, you can see that these stories did fizzle out over time. It's still early days; they could still ultimately work out, but they did fizzle out. And to have gotten caught at the top and to have rode that all the way down, it can be really painful. So I just try to keep that experience like in the back of my mind, where it's always worthwhile to follow a guy like Sprott, but at the end of the day, like Fabby said, this is like $50 for him, so it's not going to make or break him in any way. And he's got his he's got his hands in a lot of different pots, right? I mean, what were some other ones, like Alexandria Minerals, and that one kind of fell apart this year for maybe different reasons, but he's tied up in that. And like Bonterra Resources, that one's kind of crashed down this year. So, there's many ways to play this. You could always look for a Sprott, like holding like a company where he's well invested in, and just kind of wait for, down the line, if it falls out of favor for whatever reason, and, hopefully try to pick up shares cheaper that way. Or you can try the Garibaldi approach and the Novo approach, which is try to get in early, ride up the wave. It's just, with that latter approach, you almost have to, in the back of your mind, just remember to kind of de-risk and book profits, and just try to go free carried if you can, because it's volatile. So the Sprott name will lead to that initial rush and euphoria, but I don't really know if there's a formula you can kind of put in there to calculate when that hype will fizzle out, and then it's a lot more of the emphasis and focus will be on company results and fundamentals and all that stuff, because at some point it always gives way, right? There's always this handover period, and it happens for every stock. There's really never an exception that I've seen, but when you're kind of an early adopter, you always want to kind of believe you're this time it's different. This is an exception, right? I mean, we've had this talk many times before, even with our segments. Like Garibaldi was last year, and then Northern Shield, I think, was the one from, was it 2016, end of 2016, if you guys remember.
Yep. We kind of know because we don't want to remember.
Yeah, but these things did happen, right? And you can always kind of like convince yourself there's a reason for it to be an exception. I'm sure at some point in time there will be, but it's just the odds aren't that great. So I just try to be more cautious, regardless of which entity is involved. Because like even with Garibaldi last year, like I saw this broad name, it was huge validation for the project, but I always kept in mind like he's got like free carried warrants, and like he was like so far ahead that the stock. I mean, he was free carried for one, like but he had so many warrants that were like vesting. Like I don't even remember. It was such a ridiculously low number that even in a worst case scenario, the stock probably was not going to crash to those levels. So I was always cognizant. Like for my own approach, I just have to free carry as soon as possible, get my capital back out. Then if I want to speculate and gamble with the rest, that's cool or whatever. But just trying to stay disciplined and have that approach in mind, I think, because these things are prone to kind of just fall apart at the seams, like for whatever reason at any point in time. So I guess that's my 2 cents on it.
Both your thoughts are really interesting. So one thing that kind of bugs me is a lot of people actually associate Eric Sprott with the Sprott company. Like they are different. Like, and it's very weird. It
different.
It actually adds more credibility to Eric Sprott's buying that people associate it all as one big thing. Like I've seen people on Hot Copper confuse like Rick Rule, the Sprott company, and Eric Sprott. I think Eric Sprott's completely separate. So like that's important in itself. But I really feel he buys and sells on the market far, far more than any other of the rich, like the really rich people, like successful people. And I don't want to use the word manipulation, but like he can, if he really wants to, like, make a stock move, like these small stocks, like he has enough play to do that. And I don't think any of the other big names really do that. Most of the other big names will come in a private placement, whether it's like the Lundins or the Ross Beatties, like those are ones that, I've seen multiple times, or even, there are other people that surely do it, but not to the degree that Eric Sprott does, and actually is just as public, because other people might do it, but their public name isn't out there, and that might even be his choice. So for better or worse, I feel like we're actually starting to see a pattern. It's all these bigger people have failures, but like if you have the combination of positive momentum, some type of catalyst, a drill hole is the easiest one, and then within a few weeks or a month, Eric Sprott's name comes in, you're going to start seeing people trying to copy that over and over, and maybe it will work. I don't know if it's good or bad for the industry, but I personally don't really want to be a part of that. Like that's just a choice. But on the other hand, I want to express, I do think it's important to have these big names attached. It does provide credibility, but I have a strong preference for people who I think actually study the stocks more. And I don't want to make a strong judgment because I don't know that much about Eric Sprott, but I really feel he probably does not look as deeply as some of the other bigger names out there. I think he does throw his money at all sorts of stuff, and a lot of them work. And he's a lucky person, and is able to have that. But as a direct comparison, I personally like Ross Beatty better, and I've used that to my advantage. I think with Orca Gold, that was a great example, but that was not a multi-bagger, at least from when Ross came in. I was maybe a two-bagger, but his name added the credibility, but my main interest was still the project and the emerging jurisdiction of Sudan. And then the same thing has just happened recently. Like, I'm really excited that Ross Beatty is the lead shareholder in Osino Resources in Namibia, OSI, which is just now starting to get a little bit of attention. I was really excited that that everyone was obsessed with Ross Beatty at the Sprott Symposium, but they had no idea this company existed. Only one smart geo I talked to even knew. Like a lot of people actually liked Namibia and had no idea this company existed. But it's like night and day compared to an Eric Sprott, because Beatty's the largest holder and he's going to be part of all the future financings for sure. It like backstops it along with the other institutions. But there's none of this, like buying on the market from him. Like, that's a pretty illiquid stock and it may work out. But I think that's kind of an interesting case study. Like, I would rather go for those that it checks a lot of boxes and it could be a multi-bagger, but it's going to be, based on like results coming out and more people getting involved. It's not to knock Sokomon, but it's to say it's amazing. Like, I think Eric Sprott on his own could be like carrying that stock. Of course, other people are making money, but he really could be buying a lot of shares. It's something interesting to think about. So we'll see if that pattern keeps happening, but it's eerily similar to what happened with Garibaldi, and it's just an interesting transition for what's hot in the junior TSXV world.